it's my great pleasure to present Jim's story.
Thank you, Lesley, and thank you most of all for that wonderful reading. I'm so glad that our schedules were finally able to coincide so that you could be here with me. Tonight, I'm going to be reading, I'm going to move this thing a little bit. Can you still see me? Yeah. I'll be reading 3 selections. First, a few pages from a novel I intend to publish later this year called Condor Shadow, as Lesley just alluded to. Second, a piece from a collection of linked short stories, as she also said. Third, another piece possibly to be included in that same collection. I'm not really sure yet. Finally, if I haven't run out of my allotted time, which I probably will, perhaps a bit from problems of translation, the novel she just alluded to, I'm very happy for the praise that is gathered from its readers, and some of whom I know are in this audience tonight. But first, from my recently completed novel, The Condor Shadow, on a depleted gypsum mine in the California foothills, a 15-year-old boy named Travis Mackey shoots and kills a man. Frightened and uncertain, he runs away, moving from town to town and state to state, changing names, changing states, changing towns, changing jobs, unable to connect with anyone for fear of being found out. In the following passage, Travis is now 19 and has changed his name to Robert Porter. For the past 4 years, he's been working side by side with a remarkable young man from Mexico. Alejandro has become like an older brother to Travis, certainly the closest friend he's ever had. The time is 1956. It was early morning. Alejandro had just finished tuning up the Essex when Robert asked, "How much more time do you think we have on this old buggy, Alejandro? How many years?" They were on an apple orchard just outside of Renton, Washington. The picking season had just ended, a day earlier than expected. Most of the workers had already left. A few still slept in the bunkhouse. "So long as I'm around, I can probably keep it going for a couple more, Roberto. But it's going to start getting mighty difficult to find parts for fit this old girl. There are bound to be collectors out there for fine old machines like this. Check the newspapers. With the money you get, you could buy you a good used pickup and still have lots of money left over for a rainy day." Robert smiled and looked concerned. He held his hand out and looked at the rising sun just a few inches up over the Pacific. "You expecting rain?" he said. It was a joke, of course, but in focusing their attention on the horizon, they spotted a cloud of dust streaking in their direction, bearing down fast, 2-panel trucks approaching at breakneck speed. "Holy shit," said Alejandro. "Robert roused the guys in the bunkhouse. Ay, rota cabron, it's too late." They were already in the yard, a swarm of them, tumbling out of their trucks, cuffs dangling. Several sprinted for the bunkhouse. They took one look at Robert, made him for a gringo, and passed him by, clamping Alejandro in handcuffs immediately. Out of the corner of his eye, Robert saw that one fruit picker, Antonio, from their crew, had fled through a bunkhouse side door and was sprinting through the orchard, only too soon to be tackled and taken into custody. watched in helpless silence as the men were loaded into the panel trucks to be taken away. Just before the doors closed, he saw Alejandro bring his fingers to his lips and twist them like a key turning a lock. Even without that gesture, he knew his secrets were safe. But he vowed at that moment never to share the burden of his past with anyone again. He entered the bunkhouse. Bedclothes and possessions were in disarray. He lingered over Alejandro's tidy bunk, which his friend had made up promptly upon rising that morning. Just as he had always done, seemingly so long ago at the Skyline Motel Lodge in Sequoiaville. Standing in the bunkhouse, staring at Alejandro's bed, he made a decision. No more grain harvest. No more Yuma. No more San Joaquin Valley. It was back to the high country for him. The Condors were calling. He would look around in the mountains. He would become a logger. As he turned to go, something caught his eye, the corner of a book peeping out from under a pillow. It was the book of poems by Alejandro's father. He rummaged further. In the nightstand he found Alejandro's Lorca, containing the poem whose famous line he had first recited to him. He would take both volumes, knowing his friend would have wished this. They were Alejandro's parting gifts. He started to open the Lorca, then stopped, because he realized he knew by heart the lines he was seeking. Las lágrimas amordazan al viento, y no se oye otra cosa que el llanto. Tears smother the wind, and no sound can be heard but the weeping. Thank you. My second selection is a short story from that collection of linked stories, a project I started working on some time ago and then put aside to work first on problems and then on the Condor's shadow. Provisionally called Sand Soil Stories and based loosely on my childhood and youth in the desert country of California's San Joaquin Valley. It features the Woods family, Walter, Nell, and their two children, Lucy and Will. A version of this story was published in Home Planet News in 2004. It's called Shaver Lake, and the year is 1950. The four members of the Woods family rose before dawn to pack. This, their first vacation from the ranch, had somehow acquired the solemnity and importance of establishing a beachhead at Normandy. What was meant to be an opportunity for fun and relaxation was approached with a gravity usually reserved for, say, the coronation of a pope. It was almost noon. The August heat was bearing down, and they had neither eaten breakfast nor got underway. The two youngsters, Lucy and Will, 13 and 11, both of whom were fearing they might die of starvation, would have swallowed lye before complaining. It was rumored the destination was Shaver Lake, an idyllic fishing spot high in the Sierra Nevadas. Since fishing and hunting were Walter Wood's only diversions, that was clearly where he wanted to go. Where Nell, Mrs. Woods, wanted to go was less certain. It appeared to be a matter which could only be approached indirectly. Nell and Walter sat at the two far ends of the couch, negotiating, it appeared, from some script that called for frosty scowls and long periods of silence. "Wherever you want to go," said Nell. Was that sarcasm, he wondered? "Damn it, Mother, I've already told you. We don't have to go unless you want to. Where would you rather go? Just give me a clue and we'll go there instead." "Walt, as I told you, it's fine. If Shaver Lake is where you want to go, that's where we'll go. You're the one that works, so it's your vacation. You work hard on the ranch every day. All I do is cook and clean and shop and sew and launder your dirty clothes and put up fruit and stuff for us to last through the winter. It's your decision." Walter sighed and looked away, crossing his legs. The foot that rested on the floor began to tap. "Nell, you know I want you to be happy. You know that. What fun is it going to be for me to know that you're fretting because you'd rather be somewhere else?" Silence stretched out like an endless flat road. Nell stared out the window at a small boy drawing water from a spigot in the ground. The bucket he used was too big for him to carry, and he tumbled, drenching himself as well as the ground he landed on. To some it might have been amusing, but she didn't crack a smile. "I thought you liked fishing," said Walter. "I like it fine. Besides, it's where you want to go, and that's what's important." Walter stood and walked to the screen door, leaned against the door jamb, looking out. At one point he grabbed his hat and slipped outside, hunkering down on the straggling lawn to pick distractedly at clumps of crabgrass. Presently he returned, took off his hat, leaned against the door again, looking at his wife as if she were some strange creature he had dragged up from the bottom of a lake. "Nell, where would you like to go?" "I've already told you. We'll go wherever you say." "Jesus! Walter Woods, think of the children. Being angry at me is no reason to swear in front of them." "Ah, shit. I mean, shoot. Okay, since you bring them up, where do they want to go? Will, what about you? Don't you want to go fishing?" "Oh, sure," thought the boy silently. "Bring me into this." He was sorry he'd been caught listening. "Whatever you guys decide is fine," he said, and immediately withdrew. "Lucy?" Will, slinking down the hallway toward the bathroom, heard his father call out to his sister, "I'll be happy anywhere, Daddy, you know that." When she passed the doorway to the bathroom on her own retreat, seeking a place of safety, she saw Will at a perilous angle, leaning against the shower stall with his arms crossed. She looked in at him, shook her head, and rolled her eyes. After a long silence, Walter asked again, "Nell, is there somewhere you would rather go? San Francisco, maybe, to see Thurston and Alberta, or Phil and Loretta?" "I never said any such thing. We can see them any time. If we don't see them this year, we'll see them the next, or the year after that. Besides, San Francisco's a long drive. You know you don't want to drive all that way in traffic and all." Will, still able to hear the clamorous voices from down the hall, lay down on his bed and stared at the ceiling. Parents! If he banged their heads together, would that help? He wanted to scream. Instead, he closed his eyes. He could see the insides of his eyelids bright with crisscrossed red lines. Suddenly, outside, dogs exploded into furious barking. Will sat up and looked out the window. A man and a woman circled each other in the middle of the dirt between Wood's Quonset hut and theirs, shouting. Grover and Leona Pickett, a couple known to the whole camp. Leona's dress was ripped almost in two, and her bare and very pregnant belly protruded from the slit. She brandished a cast-iron skillet, while Grover clutched a bottle of liquor. His shirt was missing, and his suspenders hung down around his knees. Only his paunch kept his trousers from dropping in the dirt. The Picketts had 7 children, ranging from a boy Lucy's age, named Bubba, down to a boy of 2 with an assortment of girls in between. Some of them were outside at this moment, pleading with their parents to stop. Will recognized Sissy from his class in school. "You pig motherfucker!" Leona screamed at her husband. "You ain't knocked me up enough! Go find you a Mexican you want to hump all the time, you piece of dog shit!" "Whore!" Grover shouted. "Sorriest thing I ever did was to bring you here. Too damn lazy to live is what you are. Should have left you back in Arkansas." He moved menacingly toward her. She raised her skillet. "Keep away from me, you slimy bastard!" From his vantage point in the bedroom, Will heard the wood screen door bang, and through the window, into his field of vision, came his father on a dead run. Before Walter could reach them, Grover found his wife's belly with a sharp kick. She clutched herself and went down, dropping her weapon. He kicked her again, hard, the toe of his boot burying itself in the swell of her womb. And again. Before he could manage a 4th jolt, however, Will's father was on him. He spun Grover around, put his foot against the drunkard's midsection, and catapulted him toward the side of his house. Grover hit the wall and slowly slid down onto his backside. The liquor bottle lay spilling in the dust. Walter knelt beside Leona, and soon a crowd collected around her, Nell included. Will could see Grover struggle up and slink back into his house. Other neighbors in the camp, everyone knew Walter was supposed to be on vacation, took over the job of getting Leona to the hospital, assuring him, and Nell too, who was still comforting Leona, that they would take care of everything. And thus it was that half an hour later, the Woods family was on their way to Shaver Lake. The children noticed that their parents talked sweetly to each other during the whole trip, remarking often on the beauty of the scenery and the sweetness of the air at the higher elevations. When the family returned a week later, they learned that Leona had survived, but her baby had not. Thank you. My third selection has Will looking back on his days in the San Joaquin Valley from many years later in the 70s, and particularly remembering his mother. A version of this piece was published a few years ago in a literary journal called And Then, under the title Mother's Day Ruminations. Will remembers. The way I introduced my mother just now sounded like an afterthought, as if she were a little dab on the canvas, a light brushstroke somewhere, perhaps in the upper left-hand corner where a few wispy cirrus clouds can be seen struggling across the desert sky. Not so. My mama no wisp of cloud nor smear of paint. This was a woman who dominated my life then and now, who bludgeoned and clubbed and slithered through my life, who so tangled and enveloped me in the strings to my lips and limbs she gripped so tightly that I have spent a lifetime clipping those strings, trying to break free. Yet this was the same woman who clung to my father as if he were a life raft and she were in danger of drowning. Clung to him like a burr under the saddle, which she sometimes was. She left me with a spine made more of scorn than pride, but stiff and stubborn as if carved from the same tree. Left me with awe and wonder at both the plenitude of her strength and the black hole of her need. And where was love in all this? Hers for me, mine for her. There was love there somewhere. It skittered around like a tiny desert lizard from rock to rock, pausing and hiding, flicking out its tongue to test the air. I wrote somewhere, her stubbornness runs through my veins like a bicycle chain. Had she the grip on love she had on jar lids, I would have dwelled in alfalfa fields forever. The love I have felt for women most of my life has been much the same as that described here. Skittering around from rock to rock, pausing and hiding, flicking out my tongue to test the air. Thank you. Thanks very much. I think I have just a little bit of time, and so I'm going to read a bit from Problems of Translation. We actually have, I know some of you in the audience already have your copy, but if you don't have a copy and are interested, right now there are 4 copies down here holding up the video camera that Jill is using to take pictures, but we'll be happy to get rid of them at the end if you like. And you certainly can have them at a discount for the purposes of this reading. I'm going to read something that I've never read before here, or in any public reading. It's a favorite passage of mine. It's from chapter 43, Only the Pasta is Real. Eduardo enjoyed being a waiter. The efficiency of his movements, the alertness to detail, the energizing tug of his sixth sense. Who needs water? Who needs a drink? Who wants to pay their bill but doesn't know it yet? These were capacities he manifested with pride. He did think it a bit odd that Roberto's was packed on a Thursday evening, but you couldn't always predict. Standing now in his starched white shirt, black vest, and black tie against the blue velvet drapes dividing the garlic redolent kitchen from the sedate and carpeted dining area, he was alive to everything in the room. He sensed that the family of 4 at table 3 needed water, and noodled Julio into action with a modest dip of his chin. He noticed that among the large family dining early this evening, they occupied table 10, the big round one in the far corner. The children were restless and about to become rambunctious. That bore watching. He knew with mounting certainty that within the next 5 minutes the 8-year-old would upset his mother's glass and flood the tablecloth with blood-red wine. Perhaps a subtle intervention now would save both the waitstaff's burden and the family's laundry bill. At the same time, he sensed that the couple at table 7, either newlyweds or recently engaged, he had seated them at the most discreet and least visible location, were keen to abandon the restaurant for their hotel room and rip off each other's clothes in a white-hot rush of passion. Quickly he began to weave his way through the tables, knowing the man would be signaling for the check by the time he reached them. He'd been observing the man's restless right hand beneath the tablecloth, on a stealth mission to explore the underside of the woman's Bendel skirt. Bowing slightly, smiling subtly, Eduardo made sure to drain the remaining ounces of the Guerrero Vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon, his suggestion, into each of their glasses before producing the check and accepting the platinum credit card. But good looks and waitering creds figured only slightly in Eduardo's story. He had other skills. He was a computer maven who was uncommonly adept at disguise, codename Mandrake. He'd been recalled to the States 20 years ago after a brilliant undercover career on 4 continents because his high-tech skills were needed in New York. Even now, the largest room of his 4th-floor walk-up on East 54th Street resembled a sophisticated computer lab. Head waitering at Roberto's had at first been a cover, but when he'd retired from the company 5 years ago, he decided he enjoyed it, so why not? I think I'll stop there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lesley, again for that splendid reading. And thank you all for coming. And some of you will be joining us upstairs for dinner, I think. That would be very happy. And we'll discommode the video so that if anybody wants a copy, Problems of Translation, you can get it here. Thanks again.